So my first question to you, Nick, is you're a coach at the Division I level and one of the best in the country. You also consider yourself a teacher. So are you a teacher or a coach? And I know that's combined, but a lot of the way you approach what you do is very educational based. And I think that's something that a lot of coaches could learn from.
Well, appreciate the question. Appreciate the opportunity to have some conversation around this. I've always looked at coaching as teaching. In my opinion, they're one and the same. I was raised by teachers and educators. My wife's a teacher. So that's all I've really ever known, and I've always looked up to those people in my life, especially my parents. For me, the opportunity to pour into young men is what I love about what I do every day, and I'm fortunate. Like I said, I have a wife who I've been with now since college and two little boys. But that, the hats that we wear as both a husband, a dad, and a coach, I want those to really to have that energy and chemistry amongst them, within themselves. There's conflict there at times, but, I think you're constantly teaching, you're constantly learning. I think any teacher out there that's hungry is always craving feedback themselves. And I think that's where it has to start for me is that desire to constantly get better and be coached up. I'd like someone to think of me as coachable, someone that wants to, get feedback and ultimately get better. And then in turn, by chasing a better version of myself, I can hopefully, impact others in a positive way as well.
You weren't coaching at the collegiate level. Would you be a high school teacher, elementary school teacher? Is that the background from Springfield?
I think so. I was an education major at Springfield. So was my wife, like I said, just with the kind of what I've always known is that I don't know. I've never really kind of given that thought. I was hyper focused on, chasing the college coaching and knowing that if that didn't kind of go as planned, that I'd probably fall back and evaluate an opportunity to teach and coach on a different level. But I think, watching my family grow up and seeing, my parents split at a young age and they remarried to teachers. So I was actually raised by 4 educators and, all had a little bit different take, and so I just think the way they impacted me and watching the success that they had, the quality of life, being able to spend time with their family, that was always really attractive to me, and priority. So I think so, probably some form of that.
We are talking with Coach Ohio State head men's lacrosse coach Nick Myers. Welcome to what is now the 4th show of Michigan Lacrosse Review. I'm your host, Greg Norman. We appreciate the time to spend with you. And there's a line of discussion I want to kind of follow. You took a short road to being a head coach from college to what you had in 2009 after Joe Bruschi had left Ohio State. And you've kind of built a program in the 12 years you've been there. You've built it in one of those, top 10, 12, 14 programs in the country. And I guess the first part of this whole thing is that it all started back for you way back in Maine, right back in Kennebort, right?
Sure.
Obviously you played in high school. What kind of lacrosse did they play in high school in Maine?
As we always say around here, you're grateful for what you have, right? Not for what you don't. And I was grateful that at that time, it was new, but we had it, and the way it was when I was going through high school is a little bit different than it is now. It's certainly the program has progressed, but at Kennebunk High School, it was new. I remember being in like 5th, 6th grade and wearing lacrosse t-shirts to school and no one knew what it was that I was even wearing. It was so new in our community. My stepfather, Charlie Birch, at the time was coaching at Cape Elizabeth. And they were a powerhouse in the state. They were the premier program in Maine. And so him being in the house and introducing lacrosse to my brother and I, and really being a big part of the community in Kennebunk. My mom, was running the program really out of our house. She had to help a few other parents, but I'll give you a quick story. My senior year, I played varsity football and basketball at Kennebunk. But come spring, I was driving the games in my car, and we were handing out directions in the parking lot, trying to get everybody to get there. So we weren't privy to the same amenities that we had for basketball and football, a locker room. So it was it was considered a club sport at the time. We didn't certainly treat it that way. But it's come a long way, and I had great relationships with the guys I was fortunate to play with. My football and basketball coach were incredibly impactful in my life, so you talk about, young men that play other sports. For me, that was a saving grace, having that chance to play for two amazing coaches, and Coach Rafferty, Coach Moody. And then, had a great experience. Had the privilege to go on to a college like Springfield and compete there. And that was just a perfect fit for me.
You were a Division III All-American, I believe, at Springfield?
Yes, sir.
So obviously you had some talent. Did you ever think it coming out of Maine, maybe Division I or Division II? You happy at Springfield?
Not really. I just wanted a place that I could call home. I think at that point I was really green to it. I had seen some young men that had played for my stepfather that had gone on to college, both Division I and Division III. And so I kind of looked at their process and like how a young kid could do it. So I knew it was possible. I went to the Peak 200 camp at the time. That was a premier camp in Massachusetts. It's actually hosted on the campus of Springfield College. And I had a great experience that week. And I met Sean Quark, who's now, administrator at Endicott, and he's just won a championship with the Boston Cannons. But he was the assistant at the time, and him and I really hit it off. And he was a big reason I went to Springfield. That being said, my first year there, I tell people, I was by far the worst attackman on that team. I think that we had 11 attackmen, 12 attackmen. I was by far the 11th to 12th guy. So I didn't play a lick my freshman year, and really had to kind of go home that summer and rededicate myself. I had a younger brother who was a senior, junior at the time, I guess, now going into a senior year of high school. And that summer, him and I, we hit the wall, and we grinded about as hard as I've ever trained. But it was exactly what I needed. I knew it was home. It was the right place for me. And I was determined to try to, get on the field and make an impact. So it was a matter of going home and making the necessary sacrifices to get better and to make an effort to, be a contributor.
Talk a little bit about the point from Springfield to working with Stan Ross at Butler. What was the connection?
Yeah. Just went out west. My brother had been given the opportunity to be a Buckeye. That was big for our family, for him to leave New England and go out to Ohio. That was huge. And, he had 2 great years there. I graduated, and I had talked to Coach Bresci around Christmas time and just said, hey, listen, when I graduate, what would you think about me coming out and just, being a fly on the wall? I'll figure out how to make money. I just want to be able to be around the program, get some experience, kind of figure out this Division I lacrosse. And at that time, the volunteer position was still relatively new in Division I ranks. And so, he took a shot on me, let me come out. I was around my brother, so I had the comfort level of knowing my brother Pat, who and I are very close, and coached him for a couple of years. And then, like you said, after 2 years here at Ohio State, I was actually on my way back to Springfield to be a grad assistant, and I got a last-minute call from Craig Cahoon. That family, big time impact in the Midwest. Both his brother Corey and him, great players. And Craig brought me out to Butler, gave me an opportunity to be there. Craig resigned after a year. I interviewed for the job, actually, didn't get it. I was 24 years old, 23, and then Coach Ross came out, and I had to reapply for the job I already had, and it was great. It was a great, humbling moment to be denied in my first head coaching interview, but then to also have to, resell myself, if you will, to our new leader, Coach Ross. I'm so glad that he gave me that chance to be retained, because I learned a ton in those 2 years with Craig and Stan. Coach Ross and I actually are working on the USA staff together right now, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But Butler's a unique place. If you've ever been to Butler, it's the Butler way. A lot of what we say here, we talk about the Buckeye way. A lot of that's been built on what I experienced at Butler. I'm a huge Celtics fan. I was bummed last night with the loss, but I was playing noontime hoops with guys like Coach Stevens. He was 3rd or 4th assistant at the time, and I can remember sitting in my office at Butler and hearing basketball practice, but not hearing the basketball dribble, and they'd be out there 30, 40 minutes of just defensive drills, just footwork, and grinding. And, it really resonated with me, just the toughness and the way that basketball program was built, and really the way the athletic department was built, on Hinkle Fieldhouse. So that was a great space for a young coach to be. It really kind of molded me those 2 years in Ohio, and then certainly at Butler. And then I've got the opportunity to come back to Ohio State.
Just informational. I know what happened at Michigan State, because Michigan State had a great Division I program back in the 70s and 80s. What happened at Butler? We had a bunch of Michigan kids playing there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good question. The best way I could frame it, it didn't happen when I was there. The
Right.
program, got let go about year and a half, maybe 2 years after I left. But it was a change of leadership. Like a lot of things. That we had a new athletic director that came in, had a little different vision, for the athletic department at that time. And lacrosse was not going to be a part of it. There was a couple other sports as well, and that was too bad, because I do believe that Butler had everything you need to be a really successful program. It's a beautiful campus, great location, airport. We were getting great kids from the Midwest, as you said, and we were also getting some guys from the East Coast. It's a really nice fit. So it's a shame that they don't, sponsor Division I men's lacrosse. I know that their alumni base is still very proud of their experiences there. I stay in touch with a lot of those guys still, but yeah, it was unfortunate.
I think sometimes location can be a real strong proponent for success. Hillsdale College, which is out not that far from the border going down, to me, Hillsdale College would be such a perfect place to have a Division II program. It's a private school. They've got, out in the hills, they just got that sort of East Coast
Sure.
style, look and process and stuff. And, it's just one of those things that I think sometimes locale is part of that discussion. So you leave Butler. You obviously at some point had given Coach Brescia a call and headed towards Columbus, and maybe take us through that.
Yeah, he called me. He called me, and I'll never forget that call. My mom was out for the weekend. We just had a big win over Fairfield. As a matter of fact, it was the same day. I just gotten back to our apartment, and Coach called, and he said, it's time to come home, and that was it. I mean, it was emotional. I get, chills just thinking about it, because I just knew. I went outside the office that day, told my wife that we were going back to Columbus. And, I think I had only, some of that emotion was around Michael. He had lost his son, for those that know, a little over a year and a half earlier. And that had been hard to be in Indianapolis while that was going on. My brother was actually on staff at the time. And so, the program had a great year in 2004 and in 2005. There was a little dip, and to come back and know that I was going to have an opportunity to work with him, work under him, and to really help him get this program back to where it needed to be, under his leadership. And that's what we were able to do. 3 years later, we were back in the tournament, back in the quarterfinals. Actually, first time in the quarterfinals in the program's history. Broke new ground. Just a special year. But those 3 years back with Coach were incredible. I came to Columbus, married my wife. We got our first house together, and just, Coach, anyone that's been around Coach Brescia, man, he's an amazing man, he's an amazing leader. But like for me personally, my walk at the time, he poured into me in a way, like you talk about a teacher, in a way that maybe nobody else in my life ever has. He really opened my eyes to just, what does it look like to be an incredible man of faith, a man who loves his wife in an incredible way, his beautiful family, but also has aspirations of being a great coach, and that balance that's so challenging, yet he does a masterful job of doing so. And that was a really great thing for me to see every day on full display. I learned a lot from Coach.
I brought a high school down to your first camp, my Orchard Lake St. Mary's team.
Right, you did.
Pretty good program. We had a number of kids on that team that went on to play at various places.
Absolutely.
I remember sitting in the evening. I don't think you'd have had the job much more than about 6 months, if I'm mistaken. It was a pretty quick kind of thing. And
sure.
One of the questions I asked you, I said, how close are you? You're close to Brescia, but I said, how close are you how often do you contact him? And you made mention that you had him on speed dial, because there was a lot of things, in that first year that you had to learn. So I guess it's the twofold question. 2009, you have this unbelievable opportunity to be a head coach.
Sure.
And I think to some extent, no matter who was in that position, would be slightly overwhelmed being at Ohio State, especially if you hadn't coached at that level. And that's not to suggest you weren't qualified. I'm just saying it's just the nature of the beast. So my question is, it takes a great coach to turn a program into the kind of program Ohio State is now. Did you envision in 2009 that question? And then maybe who helped along the way to get you where you are? Because it's been a long journey, and it's been a tremendous journey for the Buckeyes, certainly.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I think that's a tough one for me to answer, in sense of this has been so many people, and I believe we have a lot of work to be done too. We're humbled by the fact that each year is a new opportunity, and this program has been built on the backs of great Buckeyes. I've been really, really fortunate over the years as an assistant and as a head coach. I mean, I've coached 20 years Division I lacrosse, and 18 of them have been here at The Ohio State University. So I've been very, very fortunate to coach some amazing players. I think for you, you mentioned that the couple things I would say is, as a 28-year-old head coach, two, I leaned into Coach Bresci certainly, but he was also 28 when he was a head coach, and so I think to be, know what that feels like, know the pressure, know the expectations, but just he knew me as a person, and he knew, how I operated. And I think that Coach was very charismatic. Him and I have different strengths. So that first couple of years, it was taking something that we had both poured into. Certainly Coach had led, and trying to make it feel like my own, and really develop my own leadership style. And I think for new coaches out there, anyone that's listening, that was something that if I could do over, I would get there sooner. I really struggled there in a year or two to figure out who I was as a head coach versus trying to be, lead the Coach Bresci program that we had built. And that's tough, and people will tell you that, but when you're in it and you have to actually experience it, that was hard. I think about those players in 09, 010, 11, those first couple of years as a head coach. They were very patient with me. I think that I'm a different coach today than I was then. I got a long way to go, but I think about those guys often because I think about they took a chance on me, and they that wasn't necessarily the head coach that they committed to in the process. But we rolled up the sleeves and we got to work, and they really helped lay the foundation for who this team is today, and they were certainly a big part of it. So a lot of great people. The one thing about coaching Ohio State that people should understand, I mean, I've had some incredible assistant coaches. I mean, a lot of these guys are head coaches now, but the department here is amazing. I mean, Gene Smith all the way down, it's a fraternity of coaches. So, you need support. You walk right down the hallway here. I mean, Coach Day's office about 20 yards down the hall. So I think that's one of the things as a young coach you lean into is the network of coaches that here. We do a really nice job as coaches of just getting on Zooms now, but typically we meet, whether it's weekly or biweekly, and just bounce ideas off each other. I think that's been really, really crucial to just development, coaching development, learning. A lot of it isn't X's and O's, but just, everything from slogans to off-season training to team building, player discipline, culture building, you name it. And there's just some incredible minds here at Ohio State that I've learned a lot from.
I think finding your voice as a coach, it's hard to explain. Well, it's really hard to explain to young coaches. I always believe that it took 10 years to become a head coach, whether it's a high school varsity or a college coach. I wrote a column for years. I was a newspaper guy, and I had voices because I loved certain kinds of writers. And finally, one of the papers I worked for had a writing coach, and finally just said, you're kind of a sarcastic person. So why don't you write as your personality? And it never dawned on me that it was okay to be sarcastic. And especially from a writing perspective, because you can use it in different ways. And one day you kind of sat down and wrote it, and it sort of became the style. And once you find your voice, it becomes easier because you're not looking over your shoulder. And I don't think you second guess yourself as much. I think that's certainly true. What foundation did Coach Bresci? What did Coach Bresci leave you with, or what do you do? I'm assuming you still continue to talk to the guy.
Yeah. No, we talk all the time. We talked this week. We actually just named yesterday. It was our banquet, and we named the Michael Bresci recipient. Michael would have been 20 this year. Wow. And that's something that we play UNC every year in the fall. So this is the first year, I think, in 11 years that we haven't had a fall MRB weekend. So the call this week was to talk to Coach about the player that would be representing Michael and the scholarship, and that's always a call. Every year I look forward to telling Mike, Coach about who the player is and the qualities that he possesses that remind me, of Michael. And we just like talking about Michael. It's just great to have dialogue around the spirit of Mike and the impact that he continues to have in our Buckeye lacrosse community, but in the lacrosse community as a whole is pretty amazing. I'd be hard pressed. Coach did a lot. He laid the foundation, certainly in so many ways. The family academics lacrosse model is one that, we still talk about and use. And, I think the one thing that Coach did, like I said, is he really taught me, how to prioritize. You know, we don't practice. We practice in the mornings in the fall. We practice 12 to 3 in the spring. We've done that here for, 12 years, so I do get home for dinner, and I may be on the phone in the evenings or doing things, but I watched Coach do that for years. He wasn't a guy that stayed in the office till 8 or 9 o'clock. He worked hard. He was really smart about his time. And when I was an assistant and I needed something personally, he always said, you got to do that. You got to prioritize that. And so I think he hired me with the understanding that coach, and no one was going to put more pressure on me than me in terms of, motivating. And I've always kept that in mind when hiring staff myself. But he also was someone that, had a great, had a quality life. Coaching can be really challenging. And I think that he showed me someone that was able to really balance that. So, that was huge. And I think the players were obviously very responsive to that as well. So he had a great way of keeping it light and fun. Like I said, we had great chemistry off each other. And I think, when I've hired staff, I've tried to fire, I got a guy right now, Travis Crane, who's I think as good as assistant as any in the country. And part of the reason I feel that way is because he makes me better, and he's got different strengths than me. And hopefully he feels the same way about myself. And that's kind of how I felt like Coach and I were in some respects. We had differences, but that when you can find that chemistry on your staff where you're making each other better and filling each other's gaps, that's a really powerful thing.
With Ohio State sort of separating themselves in the Big Ten from a football perspective, they've become the perennial champion, and they're just head and shoulders above pretty much everything else in the Big Ten. Lacrosse a little different, a little more balanced, a little more parity within the program, but Ohio State probably boasts the best facilities in the country. I don't know that there's many universities that are better than those kinds of things. When you walk around kids in campus and those stuff, the university itself has to be a great calling card to be able to get kids to come to school there.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I think it's the best conference in college lacrosse. 2015 marked the first year of the Big Ten Lacrosse Conference, and here we are 5 years later, and I certainly think it's delivered in that short time. And we've been nationally televised 50 times in the last 5 years. I mean, the exposure for the program, the BTN, the ESPNU, Hopkins as an affiliate member, it's prior to 20, you can remember when Penn State and Ohio State paid for the Big Ten championship every year. And it was a one-game season. So to think that was just back, 2010, 11 to where we are now, it's exciting. It really is. As far as campus, we have an airport 10 minutes away. So, for a young man that's not from the Midwest, they fly in. Like me, growing up in New England, I had no idea, what Ohio was all about. And I had never been out to the Midwest ever, So I think there's a feeling of, for kids that when they land at the airport and they come over, they're really wowed. I mean, it's not just the facilities. It's just that I had really no idea Columbus was such an amazing city, and campus was going to feel like this. So, that on-campus experience here is, in my opinion, second to none, because it is so amazing and beautiful, but also because I think there's a misconception about just Ohio in general for some young men that just have never been out to the Midwest, how great it is. I mean, living out here almost 20 years, I mean, we love it here. This is home, and shoot, I can't imagine living anywhere else now, raising my family. So it's kind of a best of both in that way. And we've gotten great support, and it's continuing to grow. Coach, we're on the brink of building a new lacrosse stadium here in the next couple of years. We got about $13 million raised right now. So that's going to be an amazing next step for our program. It's going to be a $20 million stadium that's going to be lacrosse only, men's, women's lacrosse.
Where on campus?
It's going to be right next to the new Cavelli Center. So if you remember, like where our Woody Hayes is there, they built a parking lot. Lots changed. They just did a new tennis center, new wrestling center, and they've got a spot carved out right in the middle there for lacrosse. It's going to hold about 2,500 people. So I mean, the design to sell out. We'd love to think that could be a home for Ohio State championships in years to come, and just be a great venue, and as a whole, kind of the flagship for lacrosse in the state of Ohio.
I have a picture of you in the early days coaching. You used to wear a lot of pencil in your hat all the time. That was kind of a staple. And we were joking last night when I mentioned we had this conversation. We couldn't figure out if Matt Patricia stole it from you or you stole it from Belichick. We were trying to figure out, because Belichick used to be a lacrosse coach here, actually in Michigan, back in the day. So just a sideline. When I see him on the sideline, I always give some reference back to you, because you always used to keep the pencil handy to make notes.
Yeah.
The question,
I don't know.
it's just a side note. It's just only came through my mind, so I get that part. You got to the dance in 17. You beat a good Towson team. You ended up losing to Maryland.
Yeah.
Is the getting there the goal, or does it go through your brain? I've made the state finals here in Michigan as a high school coach, and you just think, I'm 66. I think I'll never get back. There's always that thing in the back of my brain. I got to get out of bed, and it's the Larry Bird conversation about magic. I got to hit 500 shots because he knew in East Lansing in that documentary that Magic was doing the same kind of thing, and they kind of pushed each other. Does the 17 loss a little bit of fuel, personal fuel, to move the mountain?
I don't know. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think that the goal is not to get there. Let's be clear. The goal is to be the last team standing.
Right.
And that's it. And I think the confidence that our men have, having broken that ground, that is big for your program. So yeah, making it to your first Final Four, playing on Championship Monday, there's something to be said for that. In terms of men and the building belief. In my mind, I always had that vision. I've never varied from that. I believe we'll do it this year. I don't start a year and think that, hey, this should just be a good year, just make the tournament. But I'd be lying if I told you that every player in the locker room felt the same way I did. So I think, what it does is it does build that belief into your men that, hey, this can happen. This is doable. And, I think you build belief by your work. You build on that by your pursuit of excellence every day. And so we try not to spend too much time hammering away at Final Four talk or Big Ten championship pursuit. And we talk about, winning the day. We use our Buckeye blueprint. We stand by it, and our core tenets, the outcomes, and that's the chase. And in some ways it takes the mind off the big picture long term and just, it's humbling. Where did I fall short today? Where did I nail it today? And then you get up the next day and you try to be a bit better. And that to me is something that really defines success more so than the goals, if you will. And that's how we've really tried to create our environment for the men. It's an everyday competition, and that's something that will last in them and their heart and their on their heart for years after being a Buckeye. Playing for us, they'll always be a Buckeye, I should say, but years after their time in the locker room, they're using that blueprint and chasing their best. So. That's where I kind of net out on it. I think if you work at this university in this athletic department, it's the expectations you're competing for championships. That's just what being a Buckeye is all about. So I embrace that. I love that about this university and this athletic department, and we're looking forward to hopefully making people proud this spring.
When you came home from championship weekend, privately, when you're talking with your wife, was it all you expected?
I didn't really enjoy it. I think people were like, I don't know. I mean, being back in New England, being in Foxborough, meeting Coach, Belichick, getting a chance to chat with him. Those are a couple of moments that kind of side, on the side that were cool. At that point, in the year, you're so locked in. I mean, you're so locked in, to a place where you're visualizing plays. It's been such a long season. I mean, you're on game 18, 19. We're playing Maryland for the third consecutive time that year. We've beat them once. We've lost once. You have to almost play a perfect game to beat those guys. They were so darn good. So in my mind, it was like there was never that moment where you put your feet up or you relaxed or you said, hey, this is really cool. I had, Janine Ullman came along. What was really important to me, and I said to her early that week, I said, our alumni have been waiting a long time for this, and there were some alums that didn't think this was possible. What was really important is I wanted them to enjoy it, and so we had a suite for our 11th man, people that had been there since day one. And I had a team of people that worked really hard behind the scenes just to make sure that everything was in place for our Ohio State Buckeyes, our donors, our fans to have a great weekend. I didn't want to look back and be like, we didn't do that right. So that was great. And that was kind of taken off my plate. But, you go home and, you feel like it was unfinished business. I think that Maryland team that year was so good. We had 3 great games with them, and you tip your cap. But, yeah, I've probably replayed that game in my mind, 100 times.
One of the other side notes, you are now coaching the U19 national team. I actually missed you twice. Was president of the WCLA, which is the Women's Intercollegiate Club Lacrosse programs. And we always met in the new headquarters for U.S. Lacrosse there in Maryland. And it was kind of fun. You had practices during the day while we were meeting in the evening. Every time I tried to get downstairs, I just wanted to come down and say hi. But I stood in the little seating that's up on the side to watch you coach a couple of practices. And it was, whether you're coaching U19 kids, it was the same Nick Myers. It didn't change an awful lot. So talk about your experiences with the U19 team and what that means to you.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot. I appreciate you saying that, Coach. I've learned a ton. And again, just a great opportunity for someone who's been at one place for so long to get outside of the Ohio State University and be a part of U.S. Lacrosse. Amazing people, amazing different network of people. Amazing support staff, the leadership from Steve all the way down, just first class. So I think that would be first. And a new challenge. When you're bringing together a national team, especially at the U19 level. Now I've gone through kind of a second time. We haven't completed it certainly, but we have the team down to a 24-man roster. So that process of, going through the selections, going through the training weekends, creating, a brotherhood, if you will, under different circumstances. I thought it was a great challenge, to do it with my brother. The first time around, I get a chance to work with him again this year. As you know, my brother's a head coach at Lafayette, and Pete Toner was with me that first year, who I went to college and high school with. He's the associate head coach at Penn State. This time, Andrew Stimmel is working with me, who was a captain for me here at Ohio State. And then in addition to them, just a whole bunch of great coaches, high school coaches, Coach Rubling, Coach Leahy, Coach Ross, Coach Resch. The list kind of goes on in terms of people. And when you get around great people like that, you learn, right? You grow. And I think that has been probably one of the big takeaways. And then the men are awesome. I still stay really connected to those guys. I was texting Ryan Conrad when they were in the Final Four playing for a national championship, and, texting guys like Sowers in the off season. And, I hit Matt O'Keefe up last week when he got drafted in the NLL. I think he was like 8 or 9 the draft. Top first round draft pick as an American is unheard of. So, I love staying in connection with those guys. It was a special group, and I really like this group that we have put together now. I'm hopeful that we get a chance to go to Ireland in June and compete for another world championship.
Talk about the talent. Where's your U19 team in relationship to college lacrosse? Where would they compete? Where would they be head and shoulders above the Big Ten? Would they be involved in those kinds of games? Where are they? Just to give us a clue.
That's a good question. I mean, they're a U20 team now. Since we got canceled this summer, it's interesting. The entire team roster is now at college. Typically, when we competed in Vancouver, we went to Vancouver, and half the team had college experience, and half were still in high school. So that's a big jump, as you know. You get 1 year of college under your belt versus 1 year. We had Timmy Kelly and Rowlett that had just won a national championship as freshmen with North Carolina. And then we had guys like Michael Sowers and Matt O'Keefe that were fresh out of high school, and so you knew they were talented, but their experiences on the big stage and the big moments was very different. I think this team that we have now, we've kind of gotten it to a space. Our last time together, we played the Japan senior team. The same weekend, the USA team played them as well as senior team, and we did well, and we showed really well. So I'd like to think that if we had 2 or 3 days together to practice, that we could compete with just about any team in NCAA lacrosse. Obviously, it's a bold statement, but I do believe in these guys. It's a great group. There's some names that people are going to be talking about for years to come, some big-time players. So I'm excited to root for them this spring, keep an eye on them, and like I said, hopefully have a chance to go over and represent the red, white, and blue in Ireland this summer in the tournament.
You're a great Buckeye. You've got the Ohio State hat on, but when you put the USA flag on or USA hat on, yeah, I just interviewed a couple of Olympic-level sailors who one of them had a chance in the World Championships this summer carry the U.S. flag and almost went to tears because they had never really understood what it meant. And then all of a sudden, 20 years old is carrying this flag in front of 30 other Americans. And talk a little bit about it. It does change the parameter, does it not, having that USA on your shoulder?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to even put into words. The first time you put that USA shirt on, or the jersey comes over. I mean, it comes over the years, and it hits a little different. And I think that For me, I've looked at this particular situation as just something very humbling, and just a great responsibility. When we were over in Vancouver, we talked a lot about just the responsibility we had every time we walked into the venue, to represent, the greatest country in the world, and, to steward other countries that were growing lacrosse, to spend time with Mexico, and to have laughs with them, and to joke. And, they're finishing practice and they're running over to watch our guys practice, and just to talk to our guys about don't let that go to your head. I mean, that's a responsibility. That's something that we've been given this gift of the medicine game, and to play the game, and to steward other people that are just learning the game. And I think for our men, they really appreciated that. They really understood, like, hey, this is bigger than us. And, there's so many great players that have come before them that have made the Team USA tradition what it is today. It was just our responsibility to kind of build into that and take the next step. So, when the anthem's played, there's just nothing like it.
Nick, when I'm around you, and I haven't had a chance to talk to you in a little while, and every time I get around you, Chip Beck used to be a professional golfer. And I don't know if you remember the name, but we did several interviews with him in the past. And no matter what I talked to him, he was always the same guy. And every time I talk to you, I keep thinking about how humble you are. And that just strikes me as really terrific in terms of sport, because that's not something that always happens. And I guess my question to you does humble come from mom and dad? Is that where it started?
I appreciate
the compliment. That's a loaded question. I get it.
I appreciate the compliment. My parents they're amazing people. Like I said, they appreciate a good hard day's work. As I said, they remarried to teachers, and I learned so much from my step parents as well as my real mom and dad. And I got a brother, like I said, who's in the profession, who I talk to almost every day. And I don't know. Like I said, I'm confident. There's no lack of confidence, but I am humbled by the fact that coaching is something that, it's just a huge responsibility. Like I said, when you teach and you impact people, and you're having a chance to make a difference in their lives, that it's bigger than you. And, I've learned as much from those around me as I've ever taught them, for sure. So, you're thankful. This COVID thing, this pandemic, if it's done anything, it's just given perspective, to just how fortunate we are. And we like to say we're grateful for everything, and we're entitled to nothing, and that's what Buckeyes are, and just that grace that we have. I think that if we can continue to build that grace, it eliminates some of the fears and anxiety that exist. We're living in a world where everybody spends their whole time flipping through their phone, and sometimes that can build our identity, so we want to build a stronger core and identity in terms of who we are as people. And if I can help our men do that a bit too, it's a home run. And typically that starts with just pointing a thumb and getting better at being okay, taking ownership, and being humbled by the fact that we're imperfect, and we're going to fail. We're going to stumble, and, to be able to get back up and keep going after it, and take failures as opportunities to grow.
I don't say that to blow smoke. I just, as a high school coach, you get an opportunity to sometimes have to suggest where your kids may go. And I know a lot of Division I coaches, and they're all terrific guys. But there's some guys that you could recommend much more strongly to go places, because the mentoring they're going to get. And that's the relationships you build outside of competition. And then I've always had great respect for the way you do business. And I appreciate that a lot from that standpoint. Listen, I really appreciate coming on board. Hopefully a lot of folks will watch this. The idea is that, maybe a little bit different. And we talked a little bit about mentoring. So the best to you for the rest of the winter, and certainly have what's going to be a great Big Ten season. And really, thanks a ton for your time.
Yeah, Coach, I appreciate you. Feel the same way. You got me juiced up with that background. I love that. I hope you keep that on when you talk to Coach Corrigan over at Notre Dame, or whoever you have next coming on your show.
Well, a little different background for everybody. We try to personalize it a bit.
I love it. I'm just kidding. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nick. See you soon.